Heads up. Heads up.
Heads up.
Thank you. Yes.
Got your back.
Well
Okay.
done. Thank you. You had one job.
You got it. You got it right.
Oh, my golly. Can I lower this just a bit? Look at this. Not too much. You can raise it. This is just fun. Good morning, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. Question for you. What is
Witnessing today is a new and
anti-Semitism?
dangerous phase of
I
that
bet the
cooperation that is
American-
fueled by Havana's economic desperation and Beijing's strategic ambition. The Cuban regime remains a state sponsor of terrorism.
Semitism belong on college campuses? Of course not. Do college administrators agree? Well, we'll find out tomorrow when 3 university presidents appear before the House Committee on Education and Workforce to answer just those questions. And I will cut right to the chase. If any of them can't denounce anti-Semitism, or more importantly, take action to protect their students, then they should be fired immediately. Remember, actions speak louder than words. The American people are watching, the students are watching, and the president is watching. As a member of the House Committee on Education and the Workforce, my colleagues and I will ensure that these colleges are being held accountable for their actions or lack thereof. Anti-Semitism in any form will just not be tolerated. And I thank President Trump and his work on this very crucial issue. Now, switching gears for our work this week, House Republicans continue to work to codify President Trump and the American people's agenda. We will codify President Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of America. The American people are footing the bill to protect and secure the Gulf of America. It's only right that it's named appropriately. On Friday, we received the president's budget. It aims to root out wasteful spending, deliver historic saving, and protect essential programs, just like we'll be doing in our One Big Beautiful Bill. And lastly, but certainly not least, House Republicans celebrate National Small Business Week. It's fitting we celebrate Small Business Week amidst our work to prevent the largest tax hike in American history. Unfortunately, not a single Democrat has joined us in our efforts on this. They've already turned their backs on millions of workers and support shuttering thousands of small businesses that employ nearly half of the workforce. And here to speak on this is Chairman of the Small Business Committee, our coach, Mr. Roger Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is going to be a great week for America. It's going to be a great week for small business. You know, small business represents 99% of our businesses in America are small businesses. 50% of the payroll, 50% of the workforce is generated by Main Street America. And the American dream is living large right now. I will tell you what's ahead for us. We got a great partnership between Senator Ernst and I and Administrator Loeffler. We're very closely together with the SBA, which is over purview of the Small Business Committee. But when you look at the opportunities that are out there for small business is ready for the Trump tax cuts. When you talk about Trump tax cuts, you talk about less regulations, you talk about 100% expensing, unbelievable opportunities ahead for Main Street America. So we will celebrate that this week. One of the things we've already done with Administrator Loeffler and Senator Ernst and myself is we've already raised or we've filed to raise the $5 million loan max on manufacturing to $10 million. This is big. This is a big thing because now people can expand their business, they can get started in business, they can stay in business. So we've got a lot of great things happening. We should all be proud to live in this country, but also we got the greatest economy in the world. It's going to get nothing but better, and the American dream is living and breathing as we speak right now. It's an honor to be the chair of the Small Business Committee and work with these people behind me. God bless.
Crypto's footing slips on the hill. Some reports read this morning. As a member of the most pro-crypto Congress ever, I wholeheartedly reject that premise. I want to remind everyone listening that crypto is not right or left. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's the future, and it's for everyone. In an increasingly digital world, America must step up as the leader in digital asset innovation and investment. President Trump vowed to make America the crypto capital of the world. And since day one, he's delivered by reversing Joe Biden and Gary Gensler's anti-crypto crusade. From signing a bill into law that repeals the Biden-era IRS rule that chilled DeFi innovation, to signing executive orders that create a strategic reserve of crypto and prohibit prohibit the establishment of a central bank digital currency. President Trump is positioning the United States as the world leader in digital assets. These are moves that can and should be celebrated by all of us. As the most pro-crypto, pro-innovation Congress ever elected, we are already taking bipartisan steps, I would argue nonpartisan steps, to ensure digital asset policy champions decentralization and open, permissionless, and private innovation. This is the only viable path forward. By originating the regulatory framework for crypto here in Congress, the future of digital assets will be determined by the American people and their representatives as it should be. The moment to get this done is now, and we need to get it done together. If we fail to provide clarity that protects innovators and consumers alike, the future of crypto and the opportunities it brings will belong to another nation. To deliver on President Trump's crypto promises that individuals in both parties can get behind, Congress must keep taking steps closer to getting a nonpartisan, or you guys like to report bipartisan, regulatory framework across the finish line, and quickly. With that, I turn it over to our Leader Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. It was great to hear from our chairman of the Small Business Committee, Roger Williams. Nobody understands the value of small businesses, the importance of promoting small businesses in America better than Roger and his chairman. He has ushered in policies and bills through that committee to allow small businesses to thrive. And if you look at the work we're doing with the One Big Beautiful Bill, the reconciliation package, this is a bill that will grow more small businesses across America. It'll create more jobs across America. It'll create stability. If you think about the idea that if Congress were to take no action this year, there would be a $4.5 trillion tax increase on American families. Over 95% of Americans would see a tax increase. And yet every Democrat in Washington will be voting no on that package and would like to see every family pay more in taxes. There are so many other provisions that are so critical to getting our economy back on track, to lowering inflation, to lowering the cost of things at the grocery store, at the gas pump, that are in this bill, and we are still moving through. Last week, I applaud 7 committees in Congress did their work, completely finished their work in reconciliation here in the House. Today, the Natural Resources Committee will take up their portion of the bill. That'll be 8 committees out of 11 that will already be done with all of their work this week. And then next week, the final 3 committees, Agriculture, Energy and Commerce, and Ways and Means, will take up and finish their work to get this big, beautiful bill not only through the House process, but over to the Senate. The Speaker and I met with Jason Smith and Brett Guthrie last week in the White House with President Trump to go through some of the final details that we are getting agreement on. And we've been working incredibly closely with the White House and with the Senate every step of the way, because this bill is critically important to American families. This bill is a big piece of carrying through that Trump agenda, the mandate that the American people gave us when they elected not just Donald Trump in the White House, but a Republican House and a Republican Senate to go deliver for the families who have been struggling for way too long. We do that with this one big, beautiful bill. Everything from tax stability in the tax code so that nobody sees a tax increase, bringing trillions of dollars of private investment back into the economy, opening up more energy production in America to reverse some of the damage Joe Biden did, everywhere from Anwar in Alaska, some of the great work that Congressman Begich just came into Congress, vowing to fight for the citizens of Alaska and open up more areas for production there. That's going to be in this bill, all the way down to the Gulf of America, opening up more areas for lease sales and production in the Gulf as well. All of those things are going to be in the bill. More defense funding, more border security, giving protection and technology to our Border Patrol agents. All of that is in the bill too, confronting the debt ceiling, dealing with rules and regulatory reform, all in this powerful bill. What the Education and Workforce Committee did to protect students from higher student debt. We actually protect students so that they're not saddled with high student loans when they graduate from college. That's in this bill as well, standing up and holding accountable the universities that were failing kids for so many years, saddling them with $200,000, $300,000 in debt without the ability to pay it back. So many good provisions. We're going to be bringing that bill to the floor once it's all finished next week, and then we compile it in Budget Committee and bring it as one big, beautiful bill to the House floor and then pass it on to the Senate so that they can continue this work. And the man leading that charge in the House is our Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all. It's a great day on the Hill. We're very encouraged and even excited this morning about where we are and everything. President Trump, after the inauguration, and Republicans have taken our job very seriously. We haven't wasted a moment. We all celebrated the first 100 days of the Trump administration and all the extraordinary things that have been accomplished in such a short period of time. And we've been working around the clock to codify so much of what President Trump has been doing. I think there's 143 executive orders that have been issued thus far, and we're working around the clock to make sure that we put these into statutory law so that it can't be reversed and erased by an upcoming administration. For some reason, the media acts like that this effort is somehow a negative thing. It's not at all. Anybody who says that, they just fundamentally misunderstand the relationship between congressional Republicans and President Trump and his administration. We all ran on the same America First agenda: secure the border, cut taxes for working families, revive American energy production, strengthen our standing on the world stage, and bring back common sense. Those are the sort of the common themes of all these executive orders and the action the administration has taken. And this agenda, remember, was resoundingly endorsed by 77 million Americans who voted in the popular vote for the president, and almost as many for House Republicans. We set a record for that. It's the most diverse and expansive coalition we've seen in modern history, a real and true demographic shift. And the reason people voted that way is that they had this sort of hopeful anticipation that the president and Republicans in Congress would do exactly what we are doing right now. And we are fulfilling that promise. We already have the formula for prosperity and security, and that's the thing about President Trump. It's not an unknown entity. As we've all recounted many times, he's done it once, he'll do it again. We plan to work together to enshrine the agenda into law and make sure we have a roaring American economy and stability and security and prosperity and strength again. From day one, President Trump has used his executive authority to reverse also the devastating policies of the last administration. There was a lot of that to be done. But as the previous administration made it painfully clear, executive orders can be undone and overwritten, and that's why we have to move it through the legislative process. And we are. Here's a few key examples, okay, of what we've already voted to codify in terms of the executive orders. The President's Election Security Executive Order through the SAVE Act. That's what we voted on and got that done in the House. His executive order banning men from women's sports We did that through the Women and Girls in Sports Act. His sanctions on the ICC, we did that through our Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act to support our ally Israel. And his Forest Management Executive Order through Fix Our Forests Act. Some of the things we've done so far. Now, this week, we'll add another one to the list. We're going to pass Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill to permanently rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And then we're going to codify dozens more of President Trump's budget-related executive orders, spending-related executive orders through the budget reconciliation process. Let me give you just a quick word on that, and then we'll take some questions. As Leader Scalise just recounted, we're really excited. We're very encouraged this morning. I mean, I'm so thankful to have such a team that's worked so hard. I began the House Republican Conference meeting this morning with all the House Republicans by congratulating and thanking all of our committee chairs. I mean, they worked so hard around the clock. And we've been doing this for almost a year, as we've said many times in here. And all the committee members who were so disciplined in getting the work done. I mean, they had 10, 12-hour hearings in some of these committees, some even longer. And they got the product done and through the process. So by the end of this week, we'll have 8 of the 11 committees of jurisdiction will have done their work. And then next week, we will have Ways and Means, Energy and Commerce, and Ag. And some of you reported, or some of your outlets reported anyway, over the weekend that this was somehow a snag in the process, that those 3 committees were going next week instead of this week. But as I've explained to a few of you individually, I'll just say here together in the room, we went last Thursday to the White House, as the leader mentioned. Steve Scalise and I and Chairman Guthrie and Chairman Smith met in the White House with the president and his whole team on point. We had Secretary Bessent there from Treasury. We had Russ Vogt from Office of Management and Budget. We had his whole Leg Affairs team, and Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff, and Stephen Miller, and the whole group. And the intention was to work through some of the final details, but we realized that we were still awaiting some key numbers on calculations on some of the provisions with tax and some of the other details. And it just made sense for us to push pause for a week to make sure that we do this right. We didn't want to move this quickly, speed for the sake of speed. We want to get it right. And so everybody in the room agreed that it made sense for us to do that. And so we pushed those 3 committees that are going next week just off another week, so we can make sure that we have the right equilibrium point on all the key issues. And I'm absolutely convinced we're going to do that, and I'm excited about it. So we'll stay on track. They'll do that next week, and by the end of the week, as Steve said, Leader Scalise said, we'll have our 11 committees. We'll send them by the end of next week to the Budget Committee, and Chairman Arrington then and his team will take that and merge it all together, and we'll have the one big, beautiful bill ready to go. We can pass that by Memorial Day. That was our original time frame. And some of the people in this room balked and thought that would be impossible, but stop doubting us. We're going to get this job done, okay? I'll just make this point. I made it on TV over the weekend, and I want to say it again. The House and Senate Republicans are utilizing the budget reconciliation process primarily because Leader Schumer in the Senate, Leader Jeffries in the House, and their Democrat colleagues refuse to engage in anything, no matter how meritorious, even to improve the lives of their constituents, if it means that President Trump will somehow be credited with a win. I mean, it's really sad, but that's the fact. They'd rather put on performative stunts and host these activist town halls and all this other nonsense than just work with us to bring costs down and make communities safer for their constituents. Now, just think about how the American people feel about these issues. Consider this. Secure the border, right? Securing the border is an 80-20 issue in America. Deporting illegal aliens, more than 50% of American people believe that every single illegal alien should be deported, okay? And yet Democrats, much less the violent criminals, which the administration has taken on in earnest. But in spite of those numbers, okay, the Democrats are taking trips to Central America to bring back violent illegal aliens back to the country. It's madness. Strengthening Medicaid for Americans who need it, by eliminating things like fraud, waste, and abuse, which is a huge problem in the program, including removing illegal aliens. If you add all that together, 66% of the American people think that that's a very important idea. We need to improve and shore up and strengthen the program so that it can be there for the people who desperately need and deserve it. And Democrats, what are they doing? They're lying about what we're doing with Medicaid. So much so that we've gotten them to pull down their advertising because they were literally breaking the law. We sent cease and desist letters, and they had to take it down. Cutting taxes for working families and small businesses. What American doesn't want to pay fewer taxes to the government? There may be a few, but I haven't found them. Especially on matters like the overtime that they work, their tipped wages and Social Security. Big promises for the president. We're going to deliver that. But it turns out congressional Democrats apparently want Americans to pay more. They're adamantly against all those things I just named. They're against keeping taxes low. And when they oppose the reconciliation bill, when they oppose the solution to this, to extending the tax cuts, they are actually advocating for the largest tax increase in U.S. history. End of sentence. Unleashing American energy, lowering input costs, creating new jobs. Democrats want a radical Green New Deal policy extension. They don't want these common sense solutions and all the above policies like we are bringing and that the American people demand and deserve. I could go on and on and on. You get the point. This is what we're endeavoring to do through our budget reconciliation process, and these are the policies we're fighting every day to deliver because these are the ones the American people support and they need and they deserve. When Democrats had a trifecta in 2021, they used the budget reconciliation process, but you know what they did? They used it to stimulate the economy. What did that mean? Well, trillions in new spending and tax hikes and the Green New Deal giveaways. We can't do that. It's not sustainable. So we're going to reverse it. And guess what happened when they did that? We had runaway inflation, making the cost of living for everyday Americans unbearable. Contrast that with what we're doing. What Republicans are working on right now, what we are delivering through the committees and soon through the whole House. Lower taxes, decreased regulation, safer streets, keeping money, more of your money that you earn in your own pocket. We'll take that to the people every single day, and they'll be for us. And as the House works to finish budget reconciliation over the next few weeks, we'll continue to shine a light on the do-nothing Democrats who would rather oppose President Trump's popular agenda than work for the needs of their own constituents, and I just think it's shameful. With that, I'll take a few questions. Olivia, yeah.
As you head into the final sort of stretch for reconciliation, members, centrists, conservatives seem to have a very different expectation of what the final product is going to look like. Have you made assurances, have you made promises that you can't keep to different members as this process begins to wrap?
No, I don't make promises I can't keep. This is a consensus building operation, as you know, and it's member driven, bottom up, and every single member of the conference has had many opportunities and has more this week to weigh in and let their preferences be known. This is about balancing preferences. I mean, no one's going to be surprised. Everybody knows where the touch points are on the final details of the final analysis. And we've been working really hard to take all the input and find that kind of equilibrium point where everybody is at least satisfied. Some people are not going to be elated by every provision of the bill. It's impossible. The bill's one big, beautiful bill. It's a big piece of legislation. There's a lot in it. So there's always going to be things, page by page, somebody can go through a large bill and find things that they're not, that they would have preferred to be handled another way. But in its totality, this is going to be the most important, most consequential legislation that we'll ever be involved in our lifetimes, and arguably one of the biggest in the history of Congress. And so I think at the end of the day, we'll get that consensus. And you know, there may be some grumbling about certain provisions, but as the whip said so aptly this morning in the conference meeting, he said, you gotta focus on the totality of the bill and not just individual details. But my job is to work out those details, and I'm very confident that we're going to get to that point by the end of this week, and we'll move this thing forward. So, yeah. Second row.
Thank you. Last week, the House passed 3 CRA resolutions terminating California vehicle emissions rules, but Senate Majority Leader John Thune is yet to make a decision to take up those resolutions or not. How confident are you that congressional Republicans can get these resolutions to the president's desk?
I've got a lot of confidence in Leader Thune. We work together very closely, almost daily, and he's managing a small margin as I am. Both of us now have 3 votes to spare. It's an embarrassment of riches, so he's got to do consensus building on it as well. I suspect every Republican's for that, but of course he's got to get about 7 Democrats to come along on everything, and that's the tough part. And Leader Schumer over there and the Democrats have made very clear they don't have much intention of getting anything done at all. They just want to stop all the progress. And I know a lot of Californians that are very excited, very happy that we took that big step, and I hope the Senate can get it done, but I don't know what their time frame is.
Speaker Johnson, how do you use reconciliation to remove illegal immigrants from Medicaid, and how do you confidently estimate the savings from that?
Well, it's not my estimation. I mean, these numbers come from the CBO and very credible sources. We have a pretty accurate count, we think, of how many are on the rolls in some of these states, and now we have a tabulation of what it will save the taxpayers to kick them off. And as I mentioned, I mean, public polling is squarely on our side on this. I mean, you cannot have an open doormat. You can't have an open border. Thankfully, President Trump has closed it now. But for 4 years, it was wide open, and we sent the message to everybody around the world, come here and you can get on the taxpayers' wagon, and that's just not, it's not right, it's not lawful, it's not morally correct. And we're gonna fix it in reconciliation. So stay tuned. There'll be a lot of savings for the American people, and I think it'll be wildly popular when we get it done. Yeah, back third row. Yeah.
So some of your colleagues have suggested this week that D.C. District Judge James Boasberg is being assigned a disproportionate number of, quote, high-profile cases related to the Trump administration. What is your take on that? Is it the view of House Republicans that the D.C. federal court isn't following judicial conference policy for random assignment on cases?
That's the first I've heard of the allegation, to be honest. I mean, I was a federal court litigator, and I don't have any evidence that they're, it's supposed to be a random drawing, and so far as I know, that's what's happening. I mean, we do have real concern about that individual judge and some of the decisions he's made. But look, I mentioned this to some colleagues this morning. When I used to litigate cases, I would run into activist judges on occasion, but I never walked out of the courthouse thinking that I would have the ability to impeach them. I just thought I need to get this to the appellate court as soon as possible to get them overturned, and we had a great success rate in that. Activist judges need to be addressed, and we passed the No Rogue Rulings Act a few weeks ago, Darrell Iss's bill, that would really solve that problem in a silver bullet. That's another thing we really hope the Senate can move. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. I mean, everybody, Republicans and Democrats, should want fair judges. I mean, that's our system of equal justice depends upon that, and it's gotten out of control. So I don't know. There are lots of allegations and concerns about it, but I haven't seen any proof of that. So yeah, go ahead.
You were asked about the Senate, what you expect the Senate to do with your reconciliation bill in the conference today. Will they just change a bunch of this stuff? And I think there's a concern about that from a lot of your members. And then give me your sense. I mean, how much you talk about your coordination with Thune. How much do you think, or how much do you expect that the Senate will want to put its own imprint on this thing?
Well, look, we got some strong leaders in the Senate. They're all friends and colleagues of ours. We truly regard this as one team. I know that's an innovation in Washington. I know the House and Senate are supposed to be fighting each other all the time, but that's not the game we're playing. And I've been very deliberate, and Leader Thune has as well, to have no daylight between the two chambers. So there shouldn't be any big surprises. I mean, they're following very closely what we're doing, and vice versa. But the lion's share of the work has been done in the House, not by virtue of pride of authorship or because there's a competition between the two chambers, but just because that's the way the calendar fell. Remember, we started working on this in March of last year, and the Senate was going through lots of other things during that time period. They had a change in their leadership because Leader McConnell stepped down. They had a lot of turnover there. And they had to do, at the beginning of the first 100 days, they had to, of course, do all the confirmations of the administration, and they did it in record time to their great credit. But by virtue of that calendar, it meant that the House did a ton of the work. I mean, we're probably 8 months ahead of the Senate by some measures in all the deliberations and the detail work. So that, by necessity, means that we'll drive the initial product and send it over, and that's really the way the system is supposed to work anyway on a budget reconciliation. So we're going to be very proud of the product we send over there. I don't expect that it will take much modification. I hope that there's very little at all, and that we can have an agreement. But the difference now and in years past, perhaps, is that our colleagues over there know exactly what we're doing. We're in careful, close communication, and with the White House team as well. So we're not sending over some package, that they'll receive blindly and not know what's in it. Everybody knows what we're working on and why, and the discussions we're having, and we're keeping them abreast of all of it. And if there are individual senators who have a problem, I'm apt to reach out to them myself, and committee chairs are as well. There's been very close coordination between the committee chairs on the matching jurisdictions on each side. So, look, I think that's going to make the process work really well in the end. That's my expectation.
Last question.
Back row.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to follow up on your comments about Congressman Issa's bill on judges. So are judicial impeachments off the table for the rest of this Congress?
No, look, impeachments are never off the table if it's merited. But in our system, we've had 15 federal judges impeached in the entire history of the country. I mean, there may be some that I feel merit that, but you got to get the votes for it, right? And it's a very high burden, and frankly, the bar is high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, the last federal judge that was impeached, I think, it was caught taking cash in an envelope. It's like it's got to be a pretty brazen offense, a real open crime that everybody could agree to. So short of that, if we don't have the votes, and by the way, even if we could get an impeachment article through the House on a federal judge, it's unlikely that they would be tried and convicted in the Senate on that with the divided number we have. So Short of that, what can we do? I mean, we've done everything within our power to solve that problem. And remember the stats. I think it's 67% of all national injunctions issued against a president in the last 100 years were against one president, and his name's Donald J. Trump. 90% of those were from openly, Democrat-appointed judges that many would regard as this other judge as activists or people venue shop to get in their courts. So we all know it's a real problem. It's not what the Founding Fathers intended. So what can we do? Using our power in the House, Darrell Iss's bill is a great response. The No Rogue Rulings Act would prohibit a single individual judge from issuing a nationwide injunction like that to stop the entire policy of an administration. I think that is a very common sense standard, and one that would kind of get back to the original intent and eliminate the ability of just one activist to just stop everything. And it's very reasonable legislation. We passed it through the House. We sent it to the Senate with every expectation that they should be able to take that up, and I certainly hope they can, because, again, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. It should be something that every American agrees with. We've got to restore faith in our system of justice, and it was eroded over the last 4 years under the Biden administration for all the reasons we know and have recounted here many times. And it falls to us to make sure that people can believe. Lady Justice has a blindfold for a reason, right? That the symbol is that it's equal justice under law, as it's chiseled into the marble above the Supreme Court's entrance when you walk in. We have to restore that. If you don't have the people's faith in a system of justice and fair judges, then you don't have anything in a republic. And that's why this is so important. We'll keep advancing it. Thanks so much for the time.
Please, could I ask about the FBI House Intel report? Just quickly.
Yeah.
So I saw your statement expressing some concerns after you've read the report. You're asking the FBI director to look into that. What exactly are your concerns, and how high do you think this went at the FBI?
So if you go back to 2017, after the baseball shooting, the FBI had brought in the members of the team. Roger Williams was one of those members who was part of that briefing. And at that meeting, they went through some of the information. Some of it was classified, some of it wasn't. But they ultimately let us know what their conclusion was, and that's when they said it was classified as suicide by cop. And I'll tell you, I was offended. I think all of us there were highly offended that that was the conclusion that the FBI in 2017 came to, because it wasn't what happened on the baseball field. He went there with the intention of killing all of us on the baseball field, and he had a list in his pocket of other Republicans he wanted to kill. It was very politically motivated, and it was clear they suppressed a lot of facts. And what the FBI report that Kash Patel's FBI came out with today shows they suppressed factual evidence to reach a different conclusion than what the facts led to show. Suicide by cop was not the conclusion. They ultimately changed it to domestic terrorism, and I applaud the new FBI for making that change in the justification, but they also revealed some of the other facts that were suppressed. The fact that it was politically motivated, even though they had some of that factual evidence, they hid that because they didn't want to make it look like it was politically motivated. Look, the guy went there and not only tried to kill all of us. I had 2 Capitol Police officers with me on my detail. He tried to kill both of them. Suicide by cop is not when you try to kill everybody around, including the cops. And by the way, he didn't even know they were cops because they were dressed in plain clothes. And he had every intention of carrying out a politically motivated message. He wrote about it, and they had that evidence, and they suppressed it. So it was very disappointing. We walked out of the meeting that day because we were so infuriated that that was their conclusion. I'm glad that Kash Patel is getting the FBI back to a fact-based organization where they follow the evidence, not try to have a pre-disclosed conclusion, but where they actually look at the facts and make their conclusion based on the evidence. That's what he's done with this new report. And I think it's important that they got it right. It's also important that they find out who the people were that suppressed evidence for a political motivated reason.
Where do you believe that political motivation came from? Do you think
I don't know. We saw that some of those agencies were unfortunately being used for political purposes, to go after political enemies, to try to carry out political vendettas. It's not why they're there. Regardless of, in the Gabby Gifford shooting, all of us, I was a fairly new member of Congress at the time, and, we were devastated by that attempt on Gabby's life, but we also wanted to know what happened. We just wanted to know the facts. And if it led this direction or that direction, it didn't. It really shouldn't have mattered to the people going out to find the facts. The intelligence agencies should have been just looking for the facts, not trying to have their own conclusion confirmed by suppressing evidence. And yet that's what they did. Thank you.
Folks on.
Absolutely. I will certainly do that, Congressman. And I want to thank you for talking about the technology needs and the investments that we need at the border in order for these agents to truly do their job and do it with excellence. I will tell you that recruitment at CBP is up over 50%. So as we've allowed them to go back and to do their jobs, we have had more and more interest in people, more applications coming in, and I think that's a fantastic trend, that as people talk about how discouraging it was over the last several years by them not having their hands tied, that now that they actually get to secure the border and work for the American people, that they're recruiting more and more help to be assisting along the way. Thank you. And we'll follow up on the rest of these conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cuellar. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Rutherford, the floor is yours for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Noem, I have to say, it's already been mentioned a couple times, the amazing speed with which you all turned around the southern border. And I know that a big piece of that was your endorsement of the 287G program. You know, I fought with Secretary Mayorkas, your predecessor, to try and expand that program. He refused to do it, even though his own acting ICE secretary said in a hearing before this committee that 287G was the best thing since sliced bread because it protected officers and the community. And so I want to thank you for that. You all came in and overnight, it seems, added 300 agencies to the 287G program. That's an amazing accomplishment, and I think that's a reason for a lot of the success that you've seen there. In fact, my own agency, where I had started 287G back 15 years ago, we were part of Operation Tidal Wave, and just great success in Florida with all the sheriffs and chiefs coming together. 1,120 illegal aliens taken off the street, 63% of which, Madam Secretary, actually had criminal arrests and convictions prior to that. So two questions about 287G. Number one, what can we do to help you get more agencies involved? And number two, what do you need from the standpoint of technology? You just mentioned the technology. What can we do to help you get those agencies trained and the technology that they need to get into those databases so that we can actually run these 287G programs, which are better than sliced bread, at top efficiency?
Yeah, well, thank you, Congressman, for talking about this program, because it is incredibly important to our strategy of having the enforcement that we need to really address the criminal activities that we've seen out on the ground. 287G is a partnership between our officers, ICE, CBP, that brings everybody to the table. It's an agreement that's signed with local law enforcement or state law enforcement that allows us to operate in a task force model to go out and make sure that we're having more bodies, more people a part and backup of these operations on the ground going after dangerous criminals. We have today, I believe, 598 agreements out there across the country, over 6,200 different officers that has brought alongside of us to work alongside of us to protect our communities, and they've done incredible work. You referenced what was done in Florida on Operation Tidal Wave. Those 1,120 dangerous criminals are off the streets now today, and they are people that were here illegally, broke our laws, and now they are having the opportunity to face consequences and to go home to their home countries. I would say that we're looking for more agreements like that across the country, and we'll continue to build on it. What Florida did by having a whole of state approach is what we want to build out and model in every other state as well. And we've had partnerships from the DEA, ATF, DOJ, state highway patrols. We've had, obviously ICE, U.S. Marshals, CBP, local law enforcement, cities, county sheriffs. People who've committed their whole life to upholding the law and having the scales of justice apply equally to everybody are a part of this team. And it has been wonderful to see people jump in and be a part of it to make sure that we have not just the authorities that we need to go out there and to work, but also to have the local knowledge and the people in their community that really want to be a part of the solution and making them safe again.
Well, we look forward to continuing that. I want to ask very quickly, I don't have much time left, but I want to ask about these recalcitrant countries that, we have 1.2 million deportation orders out there that are waiting for these countries to take them back. I was shocked under the Biden administration that Secretary Mayorkas claimed he couldn't send them home because they wouldn't take them. But now I understand that now that you're in charge of DHS and the Trump administration State Department working together, that there's been some change in that. And can you talk a little bit about how that's going?
Yeah, so the Department of State is the entity that negotiates travel documents and the ability to repatriate people back to their home countries. And they've done phenomenal work in giving us the opportunity to do that. There are some countries that are still refusing to take their own citizens, and I would reiterate that every single country has a responsibility to take their citizens back. And that has always been something that has been an international common sense agreement that has existed. Many of the countries today, even as they are working with us, aren't taking their citizens home very quickly. They may limit us to 1 or 2 planes a week. Mexico had a limitation on us for quite a period of time, even a limitation on what kind of aircraft we could use. And so working with those countries is a diplomatic job that consistently needs to be stayed on top of. So many times while we have people that are brought into our facilities and ready to be returned home, getting those travel documents and the permission to return them to their countries is incredibly important.
Thank you very much for getting them out. I see my time's expired. I yield back.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Hawaii, Mr. Case. The floor is yours for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Secretary, I appreciate your rosy report on the Department of Homeland Security. I have a different view on where the department is today and where you, and by you I'm going to refer to the President, the administration, and you as Secretary, are taking it as reflected into your actions and budgets, not just in your words. But I think it's important that we start by some points of agreement. First of all, I think you would agree, I hope you would agree, that the 270 or so thousand members of the DHS workforce, if that's what the figure is now, and we would like to find out what the figure is at some point, spread across your 22 departments, all deserve our praise for their dedication, for serving our country every day, and they also deserve our professional respect. I think we would also agree that the efforts to legally reduce illegal immigration and illegal drugs of the past couple of years across our borders are paying off and should be continued. So I agree with you on those things. Overall, however, and focusing on the budget, because this is the Appropriations Committee, what little you have shown us thus far of your FY 2026 budget, it looks like you are definitely overfunding some efforts, mainly for messaging purposes, at the expense of some other efforts that are really critical, such as cybersecurity, disaster prevention and mitigation, transportation security. And you're using budget gimmicks to misdirect and conceal your intent. On your budget gimmicks, you claim a 65% increase in DHS's overall budget, targeted at the border, drugs, and the Coast Guard. But all of that increase or more is loaded into your separate reconciliation bill. You have essentially, for this purposes of this committee, level funded DHS and loaded all of the extra money into reconciliation. First of all, aside from completely sidetracking this particular committee, which is supposed to be doing that funding, you should know, if you don't already, that this is not an appropriate use of reconciliation. It's intended to maintain the illusion of responsible budgeting. It certainly is holding needed DHS increases, which many of us would support in other situations, hostage to your overall reconciliation plan of continuing tax cuts for billionaires and slashes in critical programs like Medicaid. So the question I have, and it's a rhetorical question since I'm making a statement here, is why don't you just come into this committee and say it straight? We need a 65% or more increase in DHS to actually protect our national security. Your increase is also heavily skewed to the border generally and CPB specifically, some $20 billion, all of it in reconciliation. And nobody disputes that CPB needs help. I've been to the border 3 times myself. I've spent time with the agents, and certainly personnel and equipment costs are necessary. But a question that I have from an oversight perspective is, if you are claiming such success at the border, which without spending all of this extra money which you're now asking for, do we need to do that at the expense of other programs? And I mean the non-personnel stuff. You're also loading half of your reconciliation increase into the U.S. Coast Guard, $21 billion. And everybody agrees that the Coast Guard needs help. It's critical in the Indo-Pacific, where you have actually withdrawn from the Indo-Pacific, which I think was a tremendous mistake. Why don't you just ask for that in your base budget rather than trying to hide and extort it in reconciliation? Your budget also ignores and even attacks other critical functions of DHS, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, which I think we would all agree is critical to direct national defense, but also civilian infrastructure, which is the most exposed right now, and the reliance of foreign countries on our expertise to help them with their cybersecurity, and yet you propose to reduce CISA by 20% in your base budget. And I don't think that you can claim that that's all somehow Biden misdirection. FEMA, another example of misbudgeting in my view. You, first of all, collectively have directed very incorrect and outright mean criticism at FEMA, which is just undeserved by FEMA. And it's time to put the political campaign behind us and acknowledge that FEMA is doing a good job. They did an outstanding job on Maui, and I sat with them on Maui when they were trying their very best and did their very best while their president was criticizing their work. We don't need this, and further, we certainly need to fund them adequately. Transportation Security Administration, same basic observation, a critical agency which you have not adequately funded. So fundamentally, my time is running short. Obviously, this is a critical agency. It deserves to be led responsibly and transparently. It deserves to be budgeted for transparently and responsibly. And until we get there, I do not feel safer under your leadership at DHS.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, if I can respond quickly. Thank you for your comments, and I'd like to respond to you. If I don't have time today, I will in writing or in answers to other questions. But we have focused on making sure that we're going forward with a Department of Homeland Security that focuses on what our mission is, and that is to secure America's homeland and do that while being accountable to taxpayers. So every single component I have, 23 different departments, we have gone back to their mission statement on what they were intended to do and put them back on mission. So
should use this time, this free week that they have, to vote on policy that matters for everyday Americans. But instead, they should be talking about turning off tariffs that are reckless and dangerous. But instead, we're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill to rename the Gulf of Mexico. A slap in the face to hardworking Americans who want their leaders to bring down the cost of living, the cost that they face each and every day in childcare, in healthcare, in gas, groceries, rent. Those are things that the American public cares about, and those are the things that House Republicans are ignoring each and every day. With that, I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. Honored to be here with DPCC Chair Dingo and Co-Chair Trahan. You may have seen recent reports showing that 19 billion passwords were hacked and put online. So my public service announcement for today is change your password. Unless you're Pete Hegseth, because you have no concept of operational security. Pete Hegseth texted advanced information on combat operations to random people more than once on a Signal application. And we know from recent reporting that the Signal app that the Trump administration was using was a modified version done by telemessage. We know at least Mike Waltz was using that. Maybe that's one reason he was fired by Donald Trump. I urge reporters to ask Pete Hegseth if he also was using the modified signal application that was hacked. Now I'd like to talk about Medicaid. So we know that Republicans voted already through the budget resolution to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. Now they're talking about imposing red tape requirements. I want you to understand what that means. That means every Medicaid recipient would have to fill out immense amounts of paperwork. They try to do this in Alabama and Georgia and end up achieving no cost savings. And Medicaid is so important to America. 2/3 of patients in nursing homes are funded through Medicaid. In addition, people get life-saving health care through Medicaid. And what happens if people don't get health care through Medicaid? Well, guess what? They're still going to get health care by walking into the emergency room and getting treated that way, which is even more expensive. If you make cuts in Medicaid, it's going to close down hospitals, including rural hospitals. So we urge Republicans to vote no on the dramatic Medicaid cuts. And now it's my great honor to introduce DPCC Chair Debbie Dingo. We came in the freshman class together. She's done a fantastic job as chair of the DPCC, and look forward to her remarks.
Thank you, Ted. And Pete was in our class, too. It was a great class. I want to thank Pete and Ted for bringing us together this morning. And as Pete said at the beginning, in addition to my role as DPCC chair, I'm also a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is ground zero for the Medicaid cuts that you were seeing the Republicans talk about. I want to be really clear with you. I've spent a lot of time at home, been in a lot of town hall meetings, in a lot of rallies, and in grocery stores, and in union halls. Donald Trump's economic policies are making life harder for everyday Americans. Costs are increasing, and every family is feeling the squeeze. And House Republicans are making things worse. Their budget cuts for Medicaid by nearly $900 billion is the largest Medicaid cut in history. The impact would be devastating in every corner of this country. And I know, believe me, the Democrats and Republicans are hearing about these cuts from constituents who are terrified about what it means for them. People like Katie in my district, whose son Nathan is 6 years old. Nathan was born premature and has required more than 15 procedures on his airway to help him breathe. As she told me, some of those procedures have cost $20,000 or more. And without Medicaid, there's no way that Katie and her family would be able to meet Nathan's complex medical needs. When I was at Michigan, just on the way to visit a doctor, a woman started crying in the elevator with their child in a wheelchair and said, "What will I do if I can't bring my child here, if they cut me?" 75% of the children at Children's Hospital in Detroit are on Medicaid. And seniors said to me, "Are they going to kick my husband out on the street from a nursing home?" That's the stories that people are telling us. Medicaid's a lifeline. It keeps children healthy, it helps parents work, and it cares for seniors in nursing homes. The American people cannot afford Medicaid cuts, especially as the economy is being crashed around them by President Trump. House Democrats are fighting to stop this Republican budget and save Medicaid. We have been active across the country with hundreds of local events, raising the human stories, having people understand these aren't numbers. It's human lives. And more importantly, we're raising more stories in every community so people know who it's going to be impacting. And that's what we're going to continue to do until this Republican budget is defeated. So with that, let me yield to my DPCC co-chair and fellow Energy and Commerce Committee member, Lori Treja.
Well, thank you, Chair Dingell, and thank you to Chair Aguilar and Vice Chair Liu for hosting us this morning. Republicans in Congress are locked in a debate this week about everything that you need to know of their priorities. They're trying to decide how to pay for massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors, and they've narrowed it down to two options: kick millions of Americans off of their health care by slashing Medicaid, or take food off the table for working families by cutting nutritional assistance. And let's be honest, Donald Trump doesn't care which one they choose, as long as they send what he calls a big, beautiful bill to the White House. But there's nothing beautiful about ripping health care away from millions of Americans. Medicaid is a lifeline. It's prenatal care for moms. It's nursing home care for seniors. It's the support for kids with disabilities that they need to thrive in school. Republicans aren't doing this to fix the economy or to reduce the deficit or to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse. They're doing it so Elon Musk can buy another private jet. Meanwhile, families are already making impossible choices every day. Do I pay for medicine or do I buy groceries? Do I take my child to the doctor or do I pay my utility bills? And now Republicans want to make those choices even harder. Well, House Democrats have a message for our colleagues across the aisle. If you're going to gut Medicaid so your billionaire buddies can get a tax cut that's bigger than what most teachers make in their lifetimes, we're going to make it as painful as possible. We're going to fight back, and we're going to go to your districts and explain what you're doing. And we're going to help your constituents vote you out next November. That's our focus, that's our fight, and that's our promise. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Questions? No one wants to go first? Cassie?
I'll go first. Two quick questions for you and the Vice Chair, more California focus. I'm wondering first your reaction to the President's suggestion of this foreign film tariff and what that might look like, and also your reaction to these reports coming out of the Senate side that Republicans are considering going around the Senate parliamentarian and holding a vote on this California vehicle initiative that came out of the House Republicans.
I'll take that piece first. It would be unprecedented for Senate Republicans to turn away the position of the parliamentarian. It's very clear, and the GAO report on that spells it out, that this is not subject, waivers are not subject to CRAs. In our world, these are lots of acronyms, here, but in our world, the Senate parliamentarian has ruled that it does not have privilege to come to the Senate. If Senate Republicans want to blow up that process, they will do so, but it will be at a cost. And so we would encourage our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to respect the bipartisan nature, the nonpartisan nature of the parliamentarians who help guide these operations here. With respect to foreign film piece, this is just another, I wasn't sure where you were going with this question, whether this is foreign films or whether this is Alcatraz, right? This is just nonsensical, like what he sends out, late night tweets, as a matter of policy are just nonsensical. There are things that we can do to increase production for the film industry to film in the United States. We should be looking at those ideas and strategies, not reckless tariffs that will cost people jobs and raise costs for Americans. That's consistent with what this president has been proposing time and time again is his public policy solutions.
Regarding Donald Trump's random tariff imposition now on movies, I just want to say in the California State Legislature, I was a co-author of their film and TV tax credit. I think that is the way to go because that doesn't actually increase costs on movies. A tariff on movies, foreign movies, would increase costs on movies, and no one in Hollywood was asking for a 100% tariff. Donald Trump didn't appear to have talked to anyone about the 100% tariff on foreign movies. It just seems like another random idea that he put out there with no thought about how it would actually be implemented, because if it was implemented, it would increase consumer costs on movies. Also, it would just make some movies really far less interesting, right? So if All Quiet on the Western Front had to be renamed All Quiet on the U.S. side of the Canadian border, much less interesting movie. So there's just no thought behind what Donald Trump is doing with his indiscriminate tariffs.
It's pretty consistent through line. Nick?
I want to ask about ranking members. Do you have any sense of when you might call an election for the position that might soon be vacated by Congressman Connolly or perhaps for the Agriculture Committee?
There's currently no vacancies for any ranking member positions. If there's a vacancy, the vice chair and I will call an election in accordance with House Democratic Caucus rules. But there's no vacancy at this point. I said that last week, and that remains the case. Michael and Mika?
House Financial Services Democrats walked out of a crypto hearing, and they're holding their own shadow hearing to spotlight Trump's ties to the crypto industry. As you all continue to make your economic case to the American people, cryptocurrency continues to be an emerging issue that matters to a lot of Americans. Does bypassing bipartisan opportunities to debate the issue, does that risk undermining your message on, working with Republicans to find common ground on these issues that all Americans care about? Crypto really isn't a partisan issue, but it seems to be becoming that way with a lot of the rancor that's happening on both sides of the Capitol.
We want bipartisan solutions, but we have also said, the focus should be on how we drive down costs that Americans face. That should be our focus, our goal, our North Star, and we should, if Speaker Johnson and Donald Trump were serious about lowering costs for folks, we wouldn't have the schedule that they have in front of us. That needs to be our focus, not in raising costs that for people who want to go to the movie theaters, not in kicking people off of healthcare coverage. That's not the appropriate place that we should be spending our time. There are bipartisan solutions, but what clouds the water oftentimes, especially on this case, is the president and his family seeking to enrich themselves through meme coins, stable coin, the crypto world. There are bipartisan solutions that Democrats are willing to embrace with respect to regulating this industry in a fair way, but we don't want that to mean that the president now has a new line of business, a new book of business for him and his family to profit off of. So that's, I think, what the Agriculture Committee Democrats and the Financial Service Committee Democrats are looking at and weighing as they make these decisions. Anybody else? Mika?
Thank you. I saw that Whip Clark was in Indianapolis for an event with Congressman Andre Carson last week. I know that he is facing one of the primary challengers. Do you expect leadership to step in and do more events with members facing younger primary challengers?
If members want us to visit, we try to accommodate and visit. I appreciate Whip Clark making the time to go to Indianapolis. I know she and Lori also spent part of the weekend at Molly McGovern's funeral. Being there for one another as part of our Democratic family is so incredibly important in this time for the McGovern family. So in between all of that, the fact that Whip Clark made time for Andre Carson in Indianapolis is great, and we appreciate that. I'm not as popular. The vice chair and I aren't as popular as other members of the leadership team, but when they ask, we will try to make a trip and accommodate and be helpful. Look, we are a Democratic caucus family, and just as we have done in the past few years, if members want us to travel and to be seen and to help them, town halls, events, political matters, we want to ensure our members succeed. And we want to be there for one another. And so that continues to be kind of a guiding force of this leadership team.
Thank you. The Texas Democratic Party is considering a resolution to condemn Henry Cuellar for a number of votes where he was one or two of the Democrats for a Republican bill, saying he has disregard for the values of the Texas Democratic Party, speaking of gun protection. One, do you oppose Texas Democrats condemning him for those reasons? Two, does Henry Cuellar have disregard for the values of the Democratic Party?
Henry Cuellar is a great member of the Democratic Caucus. I serve with him on the Appropriations Committee. He's a thoughtful public servant who always has the interests of South Texas and Laredo on his mind. He's always talking about international trade and the importance that brings to the U.S. and Texas economies. And so I'll let the Texas Democrats do what they need to do. I'm not a voter in that election, but Henry's contributions are vast and many within this caucus.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Tomorrow, the DOGE subcommittee is holding a hearing on men and women's sports. Your understanding, what does men and women's sports have to do with government efficiency? And then secondly, how should Democrats approach the issue of transgender participation in sports, given that it's not an issue that's necessarily split on party lines?
One, I have no idea what the DOGE committee has to do about this, but I assume, like many things that DOGE committee here in Congress does, it's part of some sort of handshake deal that Marjorie Taylor Greene extracted from Speaker Johnson. That's why she's leading the committee, and so they will get to talk about the issues that she wants to talk about. With respect to the issue, the president has put out an executive order. The NCAA has guidance. Each of our states have rules guiding sports in high school, athletics. In California, our law says that the student gets to decide where they participate. If Republicans want to add layers of government to that, they're free to engage in that debate. We feel that is a topic that is best left to our scholastic and sports authorities locally and parents in that case. And so I'd ask Lori to also come up because she's talked about this issue in the past as a Division I athlete. But House Democrats, there's no space in between House Democrats, on this issue. We oppose Marjorie Taylor Greene, adding this to a list of things that they want to affect. Again, this does nothing to address that their policies that they're advocating are to kick people off of health care coverage. Nothing talks about reducing costs or the burdens that Americans face. All of this is just for show.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really have anything to add. Chairman Aguilar covered it quite well. They look at this issue as something that they can just lodge a political win. Even though the president has signed an executive order, they should be moving on to the issues that actually matter and impact so many hardworking families in this country. But they won't because they keep coming back to this issue as though it's one that is relevant in people's lives. So look, I was a college athlete myself, and I've been pretty upfront about, where there's big differences between a transgender athlete playing at a collegiate level or a high school level and not letting 6-year-olds play in their youth soccer sports. And that's who they're targeting with these cruel policies, is not letting kids participate in youth leagues. It's totally government overreach, and we've got the structures in place to make those rules, but they're bypassing it because they look at it as a political opportunity. Thank you.
Last question.
So I want to ask you about a bill you all are voting on this afternoon, HR 1516. What is your position and what are your thoughts more broadly on the DHS restrictions on Confucius Institutes and Chinese entities of concern?
This is an issue that's come up multiple times, in the last, Congress as well. Again, just an absolute, abject failure on behalf of a Republican majority to deal with issues that everyday Americans care about. They're not concerned about this. This bill would affect 5 college universities and campuses. Doesn't address driving down costs, doesn't address the healthcare crisis that they're starting, doesn't address driving up costs with tariffs. That's not what they choose to focus on. Instead, this is an attack on our higher education system. That said, the committee has marked this up. This has been a bipartisan bill in the past. We assume it's a bipartisan bill now. Members are going to vote their districts. There isn't. We are not whipping this bill. But again, it's just it's a missed opportunity because they're devoting debate time and floor time to a topic that doesn't have anything to do with what people really care about. Thank you so much.
And it's not fair for for the last 4 years, a lot of our states have been on our own and had to pay out of pocket. I think it's a great opportunity for the federal government to reimburse some of these states. I'm certainly committed to making sure Texas gets reimbursed for some of the funding we've done along the border. I'll tell you what, it was very difficult to get anything out of your predecessor every time he came before this committee, other than lying to us and saying the border was secured when we know it wasn't. One thing that we did get out, last year I submitted a letter to the ICE director asking him how many convicted criminal illegal aliens were in our country, and this is what I got back. This is literally part of his response. Your letter requested the number of non-citizens on ICE's docket convicted or charged with a crime. As of July 21st, 2024, there were 662,566 non-citizens with criminal histories on ICE's national docket. That was nearly a year ago. Do you by chance have any updated numbers on how many convicted criminal aliens we still have loose in the country?
We believe we have more than that and are continuing to do an assessment. And of course, every day we continue to see crimes in this country that are perpetuated by individuals that we didn't necessarily know that we are here. What I will tell you is that the president, under his leadership, has already arrested and is prosecuting and held accountable over 250 known terrorists, people who are on the known terrorist watch list. We have over 65,000 individuals that just ICE alone has arrested that are criminal aliens that are being held accountable for their crimes in their communities. We also talk extensively about different governors that we've been able to work with. Many of them have people within their facilities that have committed crimes that they've been arrested, and they're holding and detaining them. If they are illegals, many times they're facing their consequences in their jail and prison time before they can be returned to their country. So, these, by virtue of being in this country illegally, you are breaking the law and you are a criminal. And we've seen the previous administration pervert and manipulate their data and information to give us numbers that don't necessarily square with what the facts are on the ground. So there's many, many more criminals in this country, and we're going to continue to target and go after them to make sure that we're protecting families.
I tell you what, the last administration was terrible at transparency, and I think it's a great opportunity for President Trump, along with yourself and other secretaries, to just be transparent to the American public, show them what we're dealing with. Once again, when we got that number back, it was it's jaw dropping to see there. My last point, I only have 26 limited time left. Myself and Michael Guest, my good colleague from Mississippi, both sit on the Homeland authorizing side. We've been working very hard through reconciliation. One of the things that I would highlight for you, we talked about many things, is infrastructure, in particularly checkpoints. Checkpoints not necessarily along the border, but in our interior, both at the southern and the northern border, I think are very, very important. Please don't lose sight of that. In Eagle Pass in particular, that checkpoint is way outdated for the amount of traffic that's been in there. I'd flag that for you. Look forward to working together and chatting more on how we build this out.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you. With that, Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes Mr. Guest from Mississippi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, first I want to thank you, the men and women that you serve with, for the incredible success that you have been able to accomplish in just a short period of time. Just looking statistics, and I believe that is the greatest measure when we're looking at whether or not agencies are successful or not. Comparing statistics from one agency to the other, 1 year to the other, we know that last month CBP reported 11,017 encounters across the southwest border. Looking back a year, so March of 2024, under the Biden-Harris administration, 189,000. March of 23, 193,000. March of 2022, 222,000. So looking at just the metrics of what you and your men and women who serve with you have been able to accomplish, again, I believe is incredible. So when you leave here, please return to those men and women and thank them on behalf of all, not only the members of Congress, but all the people from across this great nation who are in gratitude for their continued service. As Representative Gonzalez said, he and I both serve also on the authorizing committee. And last week we were able to mark up legislation that included roughly $46 billion for additional walls, barriers along the southwest border. And I know that that is something that particularly between Republicans and Democrats, we have had a fundamental disagreement. And I would ask if you would just kind of take a moment to talk about the importance of the investment in walls and borders, barriers along the southwest border, and how that not only does that make our nation safer, but the importance that it is providing to the men and women who serve at CBP to make sure that they can better perform the duties that we've taxed them with.
Well, thank you for talking about the importance of having not just enforcing of our laws in this country, but also infrastructure and security procedures that give us a wall. And that wall may look different based on what the topography is or the geographical location in this country on our southern border, but also on our northern border. And then when you talk about our maritime borders as well, we can't neglect the fact that we have needs there and infrastructure that would help us make sure we know what's coming into this country, who's coming into this country, and if it's appropriate and if they should be. Since President Trump has been in office, we have installed 77.8 miles of new border. That includes steel bollard fencing, but it also includes temporary border and some waterborne as well. We have 11 contracts that have been awarded to put in over 40 miles of new border as well, and we still have 5 contracts that are pending. And I want to thank you for focusing resources to continue to make sure that we're building infrastructure and building in wall and making sure that we're having what we need for each area to address the concerns that are there. That border wall will be built that is steel in areas that it's appropriate for, but the other areas may require us to do buoys. If we do have waterborne areas such as the Rio Grande and places like that, that it is required, and then having technology and cameras and the ability to see distances where we may not have the ability to put in fencing and even concertina wire and panels that would be used and are putting in temporarily right now as well. So the diversity of what happens is incredibly important. We're addressing the needs as they see fit, but we're going to continue to move forward with putting up that infrastructure because it does slow down traffic, it sends a message, and it gives our CBP officers more opportunities to truly address the security concerns that we've had in the past.
And Madam Secretary, in the last roughly minute that I have, I want to address an issue that near and dear to my state. March the 15th, we had a series of tornadoes that came through Mississippi. Half a dozen individuals lost their lives that day. It impacted roughly 20 counties, so roughly a quarter of our state was impacted. Shortly after the storms, I, along with many of the other elected officials, we went and we visited those areas that were impacted, and I'll tell you that some of the damage has been extreme. Our governor and MEMA quickly requested disaster assistance, but at this point, the review of that process is still pending. And I understand that that takes time, and I don't want to rush anything. But I would ask you if you could make sure that you could do everything to expedite that request. It is impacting my local jurisdictions with debris cleanup. It is impacting people as they seek to recover. So I would just ask that you would personally see if anything could be done to expedite that request. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would yield back.
Yes.
Gentleman yields back.
Yes, I will certainly get back to you and follow up with that. I'm not sure if that decision is still with us or at the White House, but I will follow up with you. And I want to thank you for talking about the fact that you're sitting there waiting for the federal government to respond. President Trump's heart is with the American people and recognizes they don't deserve that. If we had the ability to give resources to a state so they could respond in a more timely manner and do a better job than where the federal government has failed, it would be entirely appropriate. So thank you for that, and I'll follow up with you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Iowa, Mrs. Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Madam Secretary. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your commitment to getting Homeland Security back to mission. You know, we saw such a straying from that in the previous administration, and President Trump's border security promises were really delivered on day one and continue to be executed on. So I just want to say thank you for that. Under your leadership, those illegal encounters at our southern border are dropping to historic lows. Our immigration laws are finally being enforced. The border wall is back under construction. DHS is finally working again on protecting the homeland. No new laws, but we have a new president and a new secretary, so I want to say thank you. Last year, before this committee, Secretary Mayorkas at the time came before us pushing the Biden administration's $4.7 billion Southwest Border Contingency Fund. All that really was a slush fund, we know, designed to bypass Congress and bankroll those failed policies and sanctuary cities doing their bidding. He claimed it was to manage surges, but those surges were of their own doing, sending a clear signal to illegal immigrants, the traffickers, the cartels, that our border was open for business for them. That wasn't enforcement, that was actual chaos at our southern border by the taxpayers' dime. So I see that as just one of the many blatant attempts for Secretary Mayorkas at the time and President Biden to misuse those taxpayer dollars intentionally without accountability. But again, under President Trump and your leadership, we have reversed course there. Programs like the Shelter and Services Program that enabled that abuse have been gutted, and their funding is now going to real border enforcement. So I'd like to drill down a little bit, Madam Secretary, on the misuse of those dollars under the last administration. Can you walk us through some of the specific programs or activities under the Biden administration that enabled this crisis and how you've worked to unwind those programs?
Well, it was the Shelter and Services Program, which you referenced specifically. Those dollars were taken and manipulated to facilitate illegal activity and housing for illegal aliens and criminals that were in this country, and gave them a place to set up shop and to conduct their trafficking, their drug dealing, and also their crimes against their communities that they live in. A prime example is the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City. Filled with hundreds and hundreds of illegal aliens, many of them criminals, part of foreign terrorist organizations such as TDA, and in fact, Laken Riley's killer stayed there, and paid for by the American taxpayer, courtesy of Joe Biden, and those who supported him and his leadership in this country. That's what we're working to address, is to make sure that those dollars are no longer continue to be used in such a manner, and that programs like that have been misused are used for ways that secure this country and really follow through on what the mission of the Department of Homeland Security is. And that's to keep the American homeland safe and secure and to protect our communities. We have many of the grants and different dollars that we have out there being reevaluated. We're also utilizing several different programs and working with other different cabinet secretaries to make sure that our housing programs, our food assistance programs, our shelter services programs, even programs within other agencies, that if people are illegals and that it wasn't the authority of Congress and never the determining decision by Congress to make them be people who took advantage of those programs or to have access to them, that was ended. That no longer was this president going to allow money to be diverted different than what was authorized to be utilized to facilitate people who are in this country illegally and breaking our laws.
And you mentioned the number on the terror watch list already held accountable, 250, and we know there are more, and I think that Americans need to understand you are doing that work to help keep us safe, apprehend these dangerous people that were just let to roam free in our country. I certainly, as a Midwest mom, like you, understand that we need to prioritize that and make sure you have the resources necessary for detention beds as well as the enforcement side. So as we work through fiscal year 26, the considerations that we need to be taking a look at and reconciliation as well, what additional authorities or potential congressional actions do you see as necessary to making sure you can execute on your mission?
I would say the Department of Homeland Security is one of the largest agencies in the federal government, but has one of the smallest budgets. And it really is about when you look at what you're doing for fiscal year 26, and when you're looking at the reconciliation package, is to really determine where your priorities are, where Congress's priorities are. What is the responsibility of the federal government? What did our founders task us with as far as ensuring for the American people, and what rights did he remain with the people and with the state? And every decision that gets made here should be facilitated through that lens to make sure we're spending money appropriately. I always say, and have said for many, many years, no matter what topic comes up, what program, what agency, there's always going to be lobbyists who show up. There's very few people who show up in the room to lobby for the American taxpayer. And the job that you do in oversight is incredibly important. And I come to this role today not only as a wife and a mom and a grandma, but also as a business owner, someone who's been an employee for many different people, served in Congress, served in our legislature, but also as governor. And people need leadership that recognizes what the priorities are. And so every different component that I have under my responsibility, we are putting back on mission and making sure that they are fulfilling the duties to which they were created. So thank you for considering the reconciliation package. It will be considering the amount of people that are in this country illegally, many of them perpetuating crimes. We need the resources to continue doing what President Trump has promised the American people, to get these individuals out of our country and make sure that they come into our country, if they self-deport, when they come back, that they do so the right way. And that they can be a part of the American dream in the future.
Thank you again to you and President Trump for redirecting those resources where they are intended to go. Really appreciate that. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair now recognizes for second round the ranking member from Illinois, Ms. Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Noem, you've designated the Army's 250th birthday parade in Washington, D.C. on June 14th as a national special security event, meaning DHS will use taxpayer funding to help with enhanced security and support. June 14th is also President Trump's 79th birthday. At the same time that this administration is canceling critical cybersecurity and disaster recovery funding under the guise of so-called waste and abuse, it's being publicly reported that this event will involve a full military presence crossing the Potomac from the Pentagon to Constitution Avenue. We recently received your fiscal year 2025 spend plans for the Secret Service, but the costs for this event were not included. What do you estimate you'll be spending on this, and how do you plan to pay for it?
I can get those details and get back to you. I don't have them with me today, but I will certainly take that as a follow-up to your question.
Okay. Do you plan to designate NSSEs for the birthdays of other branches of our armed services that do not share their birthday with the president, but also happen to be celebrating their 250th anniversaries in 2025?
I will look and work with the administration and with the different departments and agencies to identify what would be appropriate for all of those, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that as well.
Now I want to focus on CISA for a moment. America is under constant and growing threat from cyber criminals and foreign adversaries, as we're still seeing with Salt Typhoon. Last week you said we should, quote, just wait for the president's grand cyber plan. But you have not waited to erode the department's cyber defense capabilities by removing resources and personnel from CISA and other components. Meanwhile, bad actors are burrowing further into the critical infrastructure of this country. On what date can we expect to receive the president's cyber plan, and why are you moving forward now with workforce reductions and other changes to relevant DHS components without it?
Yeah, CISA's mission is to hunt and harden and to work with our state and local entities on critical infrastructure. So to support cybersecurity infiltrations that would happen from enemies and bad actors when it comes to electrical grids, water systems, support those states, those small and medium-sized businesses that can't afford that kind of defense system themselves, and to go and walk alongside of them. I think one of the most alarming things that I heard when I was first nominated for this position, but before I was sworn in, I got briefings from CISA and from the leadership team and the people that were there, and one of the things that they shared with me was that they were aware of Salt Typhoon and Volt Typhoon, but they didn't know necessarily how they had happened yet or how to stop them into the future. That was alarming to me. It was alarming to me that we had the nation's top leading cybersecurity agency that didn't know how to stop the PRC and our enemies from coming in and hacking into our systems. And if we think a pandemic was scary, wait until the PRC in China comes in and shuts down our electricity.
Obviously.
And
So
our
when are we
water.
getting
So
the
that
president's
is
cyber
what
plan?
That is what CISA is focusing on, is making sure that we're approaching cybersecurity from the importance that it is.
I had a direct question.
Yes.
Do you know when the president's cyber plan will be released?
It will be coming out shortly, and that is the president's prerogative.
Okay.
I have been
Thank you.
advising him on what
Thank
that
you.
will look like.
Despite the growing cyber threats, your budget cuts nearly $500 million from the main agency charged with protecting our federal networks and so much more. So if you are so outraged by the threat of the PRC and our federal networks, why are you cutting $500 million? When you recently spoke at the RSA conference, you said that we needed to put CISA, quote, back on mission. But let's be clear, that mission is designated for you. We in the Congress told you in the department and CISA how to execute on that mission. And you all have been moving money away from CISA, and that does not help achieve that mission. Lastly, Secretary, as a nurse, I have always prioritized taking care of the health of our DHS workforce and giving them the tools that they need to do their jobs, not just physically, but mentally. DHS has made great strides in recent years here with popular programs that provide personnel and their families with the resources that they need and the support for the mental health of our agents and officers. I hope that these programs can continue for fiscal year 2026. And I'm curious if you agree that this is a priority for the department, and will we see continued funding for it in the budget request?
Absolutely, we will continue to focus on the priorities of the healthcare needs of all of our employees.
Great. Well, although we disagree on many other issues, I hope that taking care of the hardworking men and women at DHS can be an area of shared values and bipartisan success, and I'm looking forward to working on them together. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. The floor belongs to the gentlelady from Connecticut, the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, who got here as quick as she could. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My God, this is twice in one day here, so it's great to see you. We're hearing hopping here. Thank you so much, and I want to thank the ranking member Underwood for holding the hearing today, and welcome to you, Madam Secretary, and thank you for appearing before the subcommittee today. I just want to begin with a message to your workforce, if I might, and that's I'm grateful, very grateful for the work that they do, from search and rescue efforts of the Coast Guard to our first responders around the ground after natural disasters, to those keeping us safe in the air and on the ground and at sea. I want to start with some big picture questions, because I think we know very little of the details about where the $646 million cuts within FEMA's grant programs will come from. It is no secret that there are numerous reports of you, if we need to correct the record, stating that you want to, quote, eliminate FEMA within the Department of Homeland Security. I'm concerned about the direction that the administration is taking with regard to FEMA, canceling programs like BRIC, a program enacted into law by President Trump in his first term without any evidence of waste, fraud, and abuse, alongside the freezing of grants, and now 2026 budget requests targeting even more of FEMA's resources. And just right now, in terms of looking at the cancellations, the Science and Technology Directorates, Centers of Excellence, and Office of University Programs, as I mentioned, the FEMA-administered grant programs frozen virtually all grant obligations pending a review as it determines whether it will try to choke off funding for unacceptable political reasons. Resources for states and communities to respond to disasters, secure firefighting equipment, protect against terrorism, secure our ports, and much more is being held up. And as I mentioned, the cancellation of the BRIC program, funding to support hazard mitigation, reduce the toll of future disasters, save lives. That money's not going out. Research has shown mitigation efforts like BRIC save a minimum of $6 for every dollar invested, and save more than double when including mitigation of economic impacts. So federal disaster relief should be readily available across the United States, regardless of where you live. Natural disasters happen everywhere. They should not be concerned about the federal government turning their back on them when they need the help the most. We need to give constituents what they need when they're facing tragedy, that they will not be stranded due to political discord. My ask of you is, what is your plan with regard to FEMA? Are you planning to eliminate FEMA? Your testimony references that you want to, quote, eliminate dysfunction of the current agency. I'm unclear, I don't know if my colleagues are clear on what you mean by dysfunction. And I'm concerned that you're causing more dysfunction within the workforce that should be preparing itself for the pending hurricane season.
Well, thank you for your question and the discussion on this topic today. President Trump has been very clear since the beginning that he believes that FEMA and its response in many, many circumstances has failed the American people, and that FEMA as it exists today should be eliminated and empowering states to respond to disasters with federal government
If you'll just,
support.
with all due respect, where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA? I don't know about everybody else on this. My state, Connecticut, was hit very, very hard with Superstorm Sandy. Every community in some way or another has been hit by that. And the FEMA on the ground, people come in, work with the families, deal with getting the funding out. Where is the evidence of the failure of FEMA?
Congresswoman, we still have claims open from Hurricane Katrina. We have fire claims that are still unpaid to people who said they were due them 7 to 8 to 10 years old. They have never been paid by FEMA. So one of the worst things that the federal government can do is to stand up in front of the American public and say, we will be there, we will walk alongside you in the most horrible time of your life, and then never follow through on it.
Well, that's
what the president has said is he's sick and tired of federal agencies that pick and choose who wins and who loses. He wants to make sure that the federal government's commitment, when it makes a commitment, that it follows through. So he's going to empower states.
The federal government is abdicating its commitment to the American people who find
It did
themselves.
certainly under Joe Biden's administration. But now President Trump's going to make sure
Let me just say this
that
to you. The
communities are
Office
ready
of
for
Professional
disasters.
Responsibility. The Office of Professional, because I knew you were going to go there. As you know, FEMA's Office of Professional Responsibility, under the Biden administration, there was no evidence, no direction or agency or field leadership to discriminate against disaster victims based on political
I'll
affiliation,
give you all
which
the
was a
evidence you
charge.
need. I'll follow up with you.
Well,
get
and
you
I will
those
follow up. I will follow up, and I follow up with my colleagues, quite frankly, and to really listen to people whose states, communities have been devastated, and what role FEMA has played. I don't know how many millions and millions of dollars went out in Louisiana. Actually, I've asked my staff to calculate that when Katrina hit, and the response was overwhelming. And the response has been overwhelming. If you want to make corrections, that's fine. We all agree with that.
Yeah, we can point to thousands and thousands of
Well,
instances where
if you wouldn't
FEMA
mind getting
was
this
timely
committee,
and
if you
responsive.
wouldn't mind getting this committee,
Unfortunately.
the information and the evidence where you talk about the dysfunction of the agency and where it has really failed. That would be important to those of us who are appropriating dollars. And it would appear that the administration overall has a way in which they're looking at dismantling the federal government. The states will never have the amount of money because the federal government isn't going to pass that money to the states to be able to deal with what happens. It's when the federal government comes in and be able to give a hand to do that. And I think it's very clear from what you said that both yourself and the president really want to dismantle the federal government and the agencies that have provided service to the American people for decades. I thank the chair for your time and yield back.
Thank you, Madam Ranking Member. Mr. Rutherford, the floor is yours for round two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, as a sheriff and first responder in the state of Florida, we've had many hurricanes, and FEMA has come in and assisted. But I can tell you in the state of Florida, we pretty much handle those events through our regional domestic security task forces. One of the problems that we have with FEMA, and we've even talked about it up here, is how do we get FEMA to pay the bills that are due, and instead of cities and states having to pay the interest on all of that money for years. So those are some of the areas where I know the frustration levels are off the chart. And so that's one of the things I'd love to work with the folks across the aisle on is let's address these things because it's not FEMA shows up and everything's okay. It's quite the contrary, actually. So, but I do want to ask about this. In your written statement, you mentioned the designation, the administration's designation of the 6 cartels and 2 transnationals as terrorist organizations. And, these FTOs, foreign terrorist organizations, that designation is critically important. And I know a lot of discussion has been had about CISA, but can you talk just a little bit about, to put some minds at ease, I think, how is it that this designation, sorry about that.
You're good.
But how this designation actually helps with the administration being able to work, sharing information between the civilian and the military to actually go after these folks who are killing our citizens with their drugs. I think it was 23, we had over 107,000 Americans die of poisoning coming across the southern border. They're also looking to weaponize drones to be used against our law enforcement officers at the southern border. They're the ones helping to finance all of this, or were financing all this mass migration. That designation, I think, is critically important, and I don't think people appreciate it enough. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, certainly, Congressman, and thank you for the question, because it is critically important what President Trump has done by defining exactly who these people are and what these organizations do and what they're trying to do to the United States of America. By designating these gangs and cartel members as foreign terrorist organizations, it allows us in a new way to partner law enforcement activities and consequences in partnership with other cabinet areas within the federal government, including the Department of Defense, all military branches underneath that, as well coordination, sharing of information, and how a whole of government approach to how we conduct enforcement operations. It also gives us an opportunity to access background information, criminal records that we need and that we can share internationally as well. And clearly, when you look at the cartels and their activity, their partnership and their facilitation of other countries and their software, their technology to launder money for the Chinese, the PRC businesses that are out there that are seeking to destroy the United States of America, that partnership that they have built over the years and the sophistication to which they operate, we have to be prepared for. We have to recognize what they are, what level they're at, how they're continuing to recruit members and affiliates, and how more and more dangerous they get to be the longer that they operate in the United States without consequences. So that partnership that we have with the Department of Defense, our military and all branches, but then also bringing all of the authorities of the President of the United States to the table to go after these criminal organizations, really recognizes them for what they are. They are terrorists. They are perpetuating terror and fear in our communities, and we have to make sure that we take them out now.
Yeah, they're not just